I've seen forums debate which one is better, Horween's Chromexcel or Seidel's Doubleshot. Well, getting any arguments about the color out of the way, let's compare natural Chromexcel with natural Doubleshot. G'day, welcome back to Bootlosophy, my channel about heritage boots. And if this is your first time, my name is Tech. I'm on Whadjuk country here in Gallup in Whadjuk Noongar Boodja. I was recently asked by a viewer what the difference was between Horween's Chromexcel and Seidel's Doubleshot. Apart from the cheeky reply that one was made by Horween and the other by Seidel, I was intrigued, and so I set off to research the difference. Firstly, in as much as the tanning processes differed, as well as what people thought of them, and also how I find the two leathers. But first, in order to remove any, taint by comparing different colors, because I have seen comments that, one is more prone to T-cord than the other. So leaving the color out, I decided to compare the two versions of natural. Horween's natural Chromexcel and Seidel's natural Doubleshot. And to do that, I decided to touch and feel and tell you how these two boots wore, these boots being bought no more than 3 months apart in 2021, and both having about the same amount of wear. So this is the Parkhurst Richmond in the old 602 last, in Seidel's light natural Doubleshot. And this is Oak Street Bootmaker's trench boot in Horween's natural Chromexcel. Taking each in turn, I bought this Oak Street Bootmaker's trench boot in November of 2021 in their classic toe-capped natural Chromexcel with an oil-infused leather sole. I have done a review of it, and to my mind, Oak Street is one of the most underrated bootmakers out there, producing really good stuff in good solid service boot designs, particularly when they go on sale. Apart from my usual, 4-week break-in period where I wore these exclusively for a week and then every other day for a second week, and then took a couple of weeks where I wore them every 3 or 4 days, I have put these on about once a month since then. They're easy to reach for because they're made over a comfortable, reasonably round toe last, and the leather sole construction is both flexible and comfortable. In my review, I noted that the clicking was excellent, and perhaps the brand's owner, George, was simply able to walk over to Chicago neighbor Horween and select some great hides directly from the factory. But it then, and still now, has not shown too much loose grain or, even wrinkles worth talking about, particularly on the vamp. And the interesting thing is that while it darkened to a mellow honey in use, I have a Parkhurst Brogue model called the Spalding, which I bought 4 months earlier. This is in natural Chromexcel, that's just darkened to the color of milk chocolate. And there's no way I've worn these any more than that trench boot. But I'm going to compare it to this Parkhurst, the cap-toe model called the Richmond in Seidel's Doubleshot. When Parkhurst released it, they called it the light natural Doubleshot. But since then, I've come to understand that the word light merely denoted the natural color, and there really isn't a dark natural Doubleshot. This was made when Parkhurst was still partnered with its Batavia, New York factory before COVID closed that factory. I bought it in February of 2022, and obviously it was made a few months before that. In all honesty, while I have my fair share of Parkhurst plain toe Allen boot, their Richmond is my favorite design because I think that toe cap gives it a more like a complete service boot aesthetic. This pair was my first pair in Seidel leather, put on top of a grippy, low-profile day-night sole. And it has the combination 602 last, where it's narrow in the heel and the waist and comfortably wide in the ball of the foot. This is another easy-to-reach for boot, especially in this now mellowed color. And so I've worn it about the same number of times as the Oak Street trench boot. You can also check out the review I did, and I'm going to put links to both websites below. But note that while Oak Street still makes this trench boot, Parkhurst have evolved their production methods, and in particular this 602 last as well. First, let's take a look at how Horween produces Chromexcel. Horween is a famous tannery located in Chicago, started in 1905 and is still run by the Horween family. In the early 1910s, Horween developed Chromexcel, and the story goes that it was first developed for an industrial purpose, specifically to be used as seals and gaskets for engines. Apparently, rubber gaskets failed catastrophically, whereas leather gaskets failed by degrees, and they say that experienced mechanics could hear the engine gaskets start to perish. The tanning of Chromexcel takes 4 stages. First, the hide is chrome tanned with chromium salts that preserve the leather and then gives it a flexible base. Then it's retanned using vegetable bark extracts to make it more durable and give it a richer structure and aesthetic. Then the third step is hot stuffing, where the hides are placed in heated drums and stuffed with a secret mixture of animal oils, greases and waxes. This pumps the fibers full of oils and waxes and gives it an oily feel and a really intense pull-up effect when stressed or folded. Finally, the hide is then aniline dyed and dried, then hand brushed and rubbed with oils and conditioners. In its natural state, of course, no dyes go on. This process famously takes 89 individual steps over 28 days and takes the hide through all the floors of the Horween factory. Seidel, on the other hand, is said to have developed Doubleshot in 2020. Seidel was founded in 1945 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's also still in family hands. Apparently, Seidel redeveloped a similar tannage to this, which they originally developed in the 1940s. In 2020, Seidel collaborated with a few Pacific Northwest bootmakers to redevelop this leather. There are rumors, but not that I could find a fact-checkable fact, that it was developed in response to Horween being unable to produce the volume of Chromexcel required by P&W brands during the COVID years. It follows a similar process to Chromexcel. The hide is first chrome tanned and then retanned with vegetable extracts that gives it that structural firmness and a rich aging capability. From what I can gather, the double shot process differs from Chromexcel's in that the retanned hides are dried, and instead of being fat liquid wet in a hot stuffing barrel, they're actually hot stuffed with waxes and oils in a dry barrel. Apparently, while dry, the fibers suck up the fat liquors like a sponge. Sources like Maverick Leather say that the whole process takes less time than the 28-day cycle of Chromexcel, followed by the dry hot stuffing process. So understanding that the tanning methods are similar but different, how does Chromexcel and Doubleshot compare when felt by a non-leather expert? I have to say that initially, the natural Chromexcel felt wetter when the boots were being unboxed, while Doubleshot, it certainly felt waxier. The Chromexcel seemed to bleed some oil on hands and brushes. Even today, both pairs have been worn about the same amount. Both have been conditioned in almost exactly the same way. I condition them with neat's foot oil about 3 times a year, and then I finish it off with Venetian shoe cream and brush them. And even today, the Chromexcel Oak Street bootmaker has an oilier feel when you drag your hand over it. The Doubleshot, this Richmond, while it's still soft in the hand, it definitely feels waxier rather than oily. Both brands use similar thickness leathers, and while the Chromexcel feels more pliable, the Doubleshot actually feels firmer and it provides more structure. I'm not sure if that's because of the oily versus waxy feel, but it seems to me that the Doubleshot is easier to scratch and it's harder to buff out the scratch, while the Chromexcel, it shows a lot of scuffs, right? But it's a lot easier to use your thumb to smooth them out. Presumably, I think because there's more wet oils and firmer waxes in the leather. In terms of temper, I think Chromexcel has a medium temper, medium soft. It needs almost no break-in when you first put it on, and it feels remarkably comfortable from the first wear. You can almost feel it mold to the knobs and lumps of your feet. But this yielding temper also means it can stretch out over time, and not in this pair, but I had a pair of Wolverine 1000 Mile in brown Chromexcel. that really showed some relaxed structure around the ankle, and the Chromexcel shaft really collapsed into folds. Mind you, that pair also showed some grainy separation around the ankles as well, so maybe clicking wasn't exactly at 100%. I think the Doubleshot somehow seems firmer in temper, it has more structure. Not that the Parkhurst required a long break-in, but I just felt that there was more, fighting back when I was breaking in this boot. Having said that, maybe the firmer temper also avoids loose grain, because there's only a bit showing on this boot across the fold of the toes, whereas some of my brown and black Chromexcel boots do show lots of wrinkly separation. Now, just before I finish with how these feel, some people call the Doubleshot a work leather because P&W brands use it quite a lot. Just bear in mind that the thicknesses that P&W brands use are sometimes double the 2 and a bit millimeter thickness leathers used here. And NYX, for example, doesn't call it a work leather. Now let me compare how these two leathers look. Firstly, in terms of their color, both came out of the box looking quite similar. It's sort of pale, buttery, golden, light honey color. As they wore, and in both cases I wore them out in Australian summers with a lot of UV dangerous sunshine. As I wore them, they both darkened. But I feel that the natural Chromexcel darkened more and faster, and in a very attractive way, with highs and lows in the wear patterns. While the Doubleshot did darken, it seemed to me to be less dramatic, and it darkened evenly. After the first bout of conditioning, both darkened, but as the neatsfoot oil dried, the Doubleshot remained darker and again, more even. Over time, I continued to find that the Chromexcel seems to darken to a golden caramelized honey brown. Better, faster, and the patina is showing a lot more than on the Doubleshot. Again, as I said at the beginning, it may be the batches or the choices of hides, but take this Parkhurst. Where is it? The Spalding. This is only 4 months older than the Oak Street, but take a look at how that patina has developed. I'm assuming that the patina development is because the Chromexcel has oils that oxidize faster, and the Doubleshot has more waxes that protect it. I don't really know. Even the pull-up, I think you can see, is much more marked in the Chromexcel, and a lot more subtle in the Doubleshot. And talking about you being able to see it, I'm not sure you can, but I find that on brushing these pairs, not with polish, but just after conditioning, the Doubleshot seems to gleam more easily than the Chromexcel. Again, I'm guessing that the waxes polish it up better. Since I'm talking about how they compare, I guess I should talk about the care for these leathers. I find that if you come home with scuffs, just because you've been clumsy and brushed up against something hard, I can easily use my thumb on the Chromexcel, and with some vigorous rubbing and a bit of heat from my thumb, I can remove 90% of the scuffs. With the Doubleshot, they seem to show less scuffs, but if there is a scratch, it's harder to rub it off, and I need to wait until I condition it to really look after those scuffs and scratches. In regular conditioning of these boots, I find that the process is totally similar, to be honest. You brush them a lot to remove dry dirt, and then you also brush them to redistribute the oils and the waxes. And then I use a thin smear of neatsfoot oil to moisturize both leathers. I find that neatsfoot oil won't darken the leather, or if it looks darker, it will lighten up as it dries and gets absorbed in a day or so. Don't forget that Horween uses neatsfoot oil as one of the products at the end of their tanning process. Both leathers seem to address and absorb the thin smear well, but if you have any oil sitting on the surface, just wipe it off. Then I use a couple of thin coats of Venetian shoe cream, allow it to dry, and then brush like crazy. It's at this stage that I find Doubleshot provides a shinier finish after the VSC. At the end of the day, unless you're looking for a really aggressive patina to develop, I think for all intents and purposes, both leathers are comparable. The differences don't make me prefer one over the other, but when I look at the old Parkhurst Spalding, and I think that this trench boot will look that way, I like it for that look. I think buy Chromexcel if you want a classic, comfortable heritage boot that tells a story quickly through high contrast creases and quick darkening. Buy Doubleshot if you want a more supportive leather that seems to retain its shape and stay looking clean and light toned for longer. So I hope you like this video. If you do, I'd really appreciate it if you SLC. Subscribe, like, comment. Comment with your thoughts of which one you prefer. Let me know if you disagree with how I find how these two leathers behave. Otherwise, my friend, take care out there and come back soon.